The orbital station loomed in the upper atmosphere like a skeletal moon, its hull patchwork with centuries of repairs and war-borne scars. Inside the grand chamber, beneath the station's fractured dome, 10 alien generals from 7 different species convened around a long, low-slung table of dark alloy. Each sat in strained silence, their posture stiff with unease, their armor scuffed with recent memory. Only the soft hum of the station's life support systems filled the silence until General Korvac of the Zyrelian Dominion slammed a 3-clawed hand against the table. "We have lost 3 regiments in 36 hours, he growled, his voice like gravel dragged through oil. "No enemy engagement, no planetary anomalies, no survivors." The others shifted. Admiral Sither of the Valari blinked her lidless eyes. Scouts were deployed. All telemetry ceased precisely 3 minutes after contact. "We found only residue, thermal echoes, and charred biomass. This is not natural." There was an unspoken agreement in the air. Someone or something was hunting them, and not as part of any declared offensive. General Trakash, a massive saurian with ceremonial bone rings braided into his crest, exhaled slowly. "This world is cursed. I recommend full orbital sterilization." "We cannot," barked the Rythian strategos. His neural tendrils twitched as he processed a fresh stream of data from his implants. "The Kolar Accord prohibits orbital strikes within proximity of known archaeological zones. There are artifacts here, precious, irreplaceable. Then we die with our morality intact?" Korvac spat. "No," said Admiral Sither. "We declare a no-fire zone. Immediate cessation of all offensive action. A planetary ceasefire. We regroup, investigate, and stabilize." The vote passed 5-4. 1 abstained. The order was relayed through encrypted channels to every station, outpost, and patrol within a 200-kilometer radius. A silent cordon descended across the world like a lid over a boiling pot. Weapons powered down. Drones returned to their bays. Engines cooled. And far below, in the dense ruins of a pre-Confederation city half swallowed by jungle, a human watched the columns go dark. Kane Riker crouched beneath a collapsed ferrocrete beam, the rebreather hissing faintly beneath his helmet. His armor was a hybrid of Terran and alien salvage, camouflaged with mud and synth-weaved to make him nearly invisible in low-light scans. He'd been listening for hours, static, then the coded cadence of alien military chatter. Now silence. They had pulled back. That was their mistake. He tapped the side of his helmet, switching frequencies. Scanning, confirming. Nothing but the ambient moan of wind slipping through twisted metal and the occasional shriek of native fauna. No drones, no patrols. Just the ghost of a war that hadn't ended so much as paused. They thought he was dead. His drop pod had scattered 3 clicks east, crashed and burning. No recovery team. No signal. He'd buried the beacon himself. Let the war forget him. And in that forgetting, he became free. Kane moved like a shadow across the rubble, bypassing exposed routes, stepping only on stone that didn't shift or groan beneath his weight. The ruins offered countless hiding spots, but he didn't need to hide. Not yet. He was a predator, not prey. A week ago, he'd watched a Krlik's execution squad torch a human medical outpost. Non-combatants, nurses, wounded soldiers. They burned them alive, laughing in that rasping hiss of theirs. He'd counted 17 screams before silence took over. He hadn't slept since. The coalition believed in rules. Ceasefires. Negotiation. But humanity had learned the hard way that in this war, mercy was a luxury and trust was suicide. Kane no longer took orders. He had a mission, and it wasn't peace. A flicker of movement above. His eyes narrowed. A Zyrelian scout drone. Not military issue, private, likely sent without sanction. Curious little contraptions, all optic and no defense. He raised his rifle slowly, then stopped. No, let them watch. Let them see. He left the drone intact and slipped deeper into the city, past shattered statues and collapsed towers, past the rusted hull of an alien skiff half-eaten by the roots of towering trees. He found a clearing ringed with bones, human and alien alike, and set to work, symbols drawn in ash. A flare grenade rigged to detonate without sound, illuminating only infrared. He left it under a pile of broken helmets. A message in blood and light. You declared silence. I did not. Back in the orbital station, panic spread in whispers. Another outpost had gone dark. This time, no signs of struggle, just a faint imprint of a Terran combat boot in the ash. Larger than average. Custom tread. A name carved into a shard of enemy armor, wedged into the wall. Riker. The name hit like a plasma bolt. Admiral Sither stared at the data, her dark skin flushed with bioluminescent shock. That's not possible. He was confirmed lost. General Korvac's mandibles clicked in agitation. No body. No signal. No certainty. Trakash hissed. You know what this means. The humans sent him. They knew the ceasefire was coming. This is manipulation. No, Sither said slowly. They didn't send him. They lost him. And now he hunts on his own. There was silence again, deeper and more fragile than before. They had declared a no-fire zone to buy time, to protect their wounded pride and reshuffle a failing strategy. But in doing so, they had given one man a gift no soldier should ever receive: total freedom in enemy territory. The hunt had begun before the Council even opened their mouths. And Kane Riker was just getting started. The jungle held its breath. Kane moved through the underbrush without sound, the thick canopy above filtering the midday sun into dim shafts of gold and green. His boots touched ground lightly, each step measured, each motion deliberate. His suit adapted to surrounding light, shifting hues, blending him into the broken wilderness that had consumed the city's edge. He was a whisper among ruins, a rumor in the leaves. Ahead, a thin column of heat rippled in his visor's thermal overlay, a scout unit. 5 figures, Krillix by their heat signatures. Not military grade, but not amateurs either. Likely a private detachment sent without official sanction, meant to sidestep the ceasefire's restrictions. They moved with the clumsy overconfidence of soldiers and used the true resistance. Weapons holstered loosely, eyes scanning the wrong angles. They were searching, but not for him. Not really. They thought he was a ghost. They didn't believe in ghosts until it was too late. He crouched, unslung the rifle from his back, and watched them for a minute longer. They set up a small relay beside a broken statue, chittering softly in their native tongue. Unaware their signal was already compromised. Kane had tapped into the station's downlink 2 days ago. Every frequency they whispered across was his to hear. He drew a small device from his belt, adjusted the dial, and flicked it toward them. It bounced once on a stone and rolled into shadow. One of the Krillix turned too late. The flash grenade bloomed in silence. No bang, just a burst of light on the ultraviolet spectrum. The Krillix screamed, clutched at their sensory implants. Kane moved. In 4 seconds he was among them, knife drawn. The first went down with a slice to the neck. The second tried to raise his weapon. Too slow. Kane put a round through the helmet's mouthpiece. The third tripped over the relay unit and caught a blade in the ribs. The fourth ran. Kane didn't pursue. Instead, he stepped back, wiped the blood on a strip of alien cloth, and arranged the bodies deliberately. He placed the third one's hand on the relay. Fingers pointed outward as if gesturing. A sign. A warning. The fourth would return to command. He wanted that. He needed them to feel the message. As the jungle settled again, the only sound was the faint hissing of severed breathing tubes. Kane slipped away, vanishing before the ferns stopped swaying. Hours later, on the orbital station, the survivor stumbled into the command chamber under armed escort. His breathing mask was cracked. Purple blood stained his armor. He collapsed before the council, shrieking in Krillix dialect. Sither translated in real time, her neural implant crackling. 5 cent. For dead. 1 demon. No gunfire. No mercy. No sound. The chamber froze. Korvac stood slowly. So he lives, and he wants us to know. Trakash hissed. We are bound by the no-fire zone. To retaliate would breach treaty law. He is not a treaty, Korvac snarled. He is a weapon. And he was ours once, Sither said, her voice quiet. We helped make him. Beneath the ruins, Kane sat against the remnants of a crashed drone, its frame warped by a past explosion. He adjusted the energy cell in his rifle, watching the jungle flicker with shifting shadow and light. He had no illusions of survival. He didn't hunt for glory. This wasn't revenge anymore. Not fully. It was correction. These creatures, these arrogant generals and self-anointed rulers, thought they could sign peace and blood and call it balance. They thought silence equaled control. But silence was his territory. The next 2 nights, he hit 3 more targets. Always small, always precise. Patrols that thought themselves hidden. Communication relays protected by terrain. A lightly guarded landing platform for low-tier diplomats. He didn't kill everyone. Not always. That wasn't the point. He left traces, crafted patterns, let fear do most of killing for him. A sound transmitted through a fallen visor. A string of glyphs burned into armor. A severed power core pulsing dimly, like a beating heart. The alien forces began to fracture. Minor ranks refused to deploy. Some generals quietly evacuated personnel. Others denied the events altogether, claiming internal sabotage or environmental failure. They were wrong, but that was good. Cain needed them divided. Fear was better than fury. It clouded judgment, softened response. Still, a few began to catch on. One message intercepted from a secure Rythian channel read, "Hunter operates alone. Unconfirmed reactivation of Terran Black Operative. Full classification required. Codename, Dead Signal." Cain smiled beneath his helmet when he saw that. He was known again. From the cliffs beyond the city ruins, he watched the alien skiffs pulse and retreat, rising like insects toward the orbiting station. He didn't follow. Not yet. His task wasn't complete. There were still nests to clear, leaders to rattle. The no-fire zone had given him a silent battleground, and he had mastered its language. The hunt had rhythm now. He moved through it like music, a symphony of angles and shadows, and calculated destruction. Each encounter orchestrated to drive a single, perfect truth into his enemies' minds. Peace cannot be declared while justice is denied. He checked his weapon, his traps, the silent beacon he begun assembling in the Undercity. The frequency was almost ready. He would send his message soon, but not with words. He would let them hear it in screams and see it in fire. And when they finally broke the silence, it would already be too late. The chamber stank of fear. General Trakash paced along the central walkway of the orbital command deck, tail swishing in agitated arcs. Holograms flickered around him. Maps, telemetry, casualty reports, all bearing the same grim pattern. Silence, contact, then disappearance. The Kralik scouts' garbled testimony had been dismissed by some as trauma-induced hallucination, but not anymore. Not after the 3rd outpost failed to check in. Not after another relay station was found abandoned. Its occupants vanished without signs of struggle, and its walls marked with a crude Terran emblem carved in jagged strokes. Cain Riker was not a phantom. He was methodical, surgical, deliberate in his violence. The kind of man no species wanted to admit existed, let alone acknowledge they helped create. The ceasefire was crumbling, not from violation, but from erosion, its foundations gnawed away by fear and inaction. Strategos Valen, the Rythian with eyes like glass and neural threads coiling down his neck, flicked a command and brought up a playback. Audio only. A distorted human voice played over the comms of a derelict scout ship discovered near the southern ridge. It was laughter. Human laughter, low and humorless, echoing in static. The chamber fell silent when it ended. Sither folded her arms behind her back, her long coat shimmering faintly with shifting blues. He's destabilizing everything, not just our units, but the Accord itself. Command from the Upper Council is delaying further engagement. We are forbidden from deploying additional firepower. Because they don't see the truth, Korvac snapped. This is war in another shape. It does not need armies to break us. Just one man in the right shadows. The humans have not claimed him, Valen added, voice calm but brittle. Our sources suggest he's acting outside command. Rogue. That makes him dangerous, but not politically culpable. Trakash stopped pacing. And if we break the ceasefire now, we give the humans justification to retaliate, even if they did not send him. Korvac snarled, but he didn't argue. They were boxed in by their own rules, binds meant to prevent escalation, now turned into shackles. Meanwhile, Riker moved like a ghost beneath them, unchecked and unchallenged. He wasn't merely killing. He was telling a story. And stories, they all knew, outlived wars. Far below, that story deepened. Kane crouched in the shell of a collapsed observation tower, overlooking a flooded roadway. Light glinted off a grounded transport vessel on the far side. Valari markings, medium personnel carrier, low security. A perfect target. But he didn't move yet. He waited, watched. He could feel it now. The shift in atmosphere, the tightening ring. Patrols moved with caution. Sensor sweeps grew more frequent, but they still weren't firing. He was forcing them to watch, forcing them to live with their fear. He activated a drone, a hybrid recon unit he gutted and rebuilt. It soared quietly into the air, gliding toward the transport. A tiny payload released as it passed. A signal burst encoded when old human fielded him, low and slow. Meant for burial rites, never war. He watched as the transport's guards stumbled from the ramp, rifles raised, eyes scanning empty skies. One panicked and fired. The others followed. 3 rounds tore into each other's armor in the confusion. Kane shook his head. They were unraveling. He didn't need to kill them. They were doing it themselves. Back aboard the orbital station, Valen's voice quivered with something dangerously close to emotion. He is using fear as a weapon. Every move he makes creates dissonance. Conflicting orders, nervous triggers, internal collapse. Our units are more dangerous to each other than to him. He wants us to snap, Sither said, rubbing her temples. He's herding us toward a reaction. One breach. That's all it takes. Then we give it to him. Korvac growled. Release the chains. Hunt him down. No, Sither shot back. Not yet. Let him believe we're still paralyzed. Let him reveal himself further. He already has. Korvac roared. He's not hiding. He's taunting. Silence followed. Uneasy. Smoldering. Valen broke it. I suggest a compromise. We do not break the ceasefire officially, but a small force, disavowed, could be deployed under the guise of local militia, untraceable, no insignia. That's an assassination squad, Trakash said bluntly. It's containment, Valen replied. The plan was approved unofficially, without record. A dozen elite commandos, drawn from species with no direct council representation, were mobilized. Quiet, lethal, disposable. By the time their skiff touched down in the ruins, Kane was already watching. He observed them from the rafters of an old transit station, eyes narrow behind his visor. These weren't scouts. Their formation was clean, practiced. They moved with the caution of killers. Finally, he thought, an honest response. He didn't run. He welcomed them. By dusk, half of them were gone. The rest limped back toward their exfil point, bleeding and disoriented, dragging their wounded through ash and wire. Kane watched them retreat from the shadows, silent and unseen. He could have finished them. He didn't. They would talk. Let them spread the truth. Let them whisper it to every trembling recruit, every smug tactician, every general who thought the war was under control. The human wasn't coming for victory. He was coming for reckoning. And the longer they waited, the more they obeyed the rules they'd written for their own comfort, the worse that reckoning would become. Rain swept across the ruins in sheets, washing blood into cracks between fractured stone. Kane moved through the downpour with the same precision he always had. Quiet, measured, relentless. His suit's camouflage shimmered faintly as water rolled down his armor, tracing the lines of a man long past exhaustion. This was no longer a mission. It was a message carved into the bones of failure. The satellite dish loomed before him now, tilted, cracked, but still functional. He'd repaired its circuitry days ago, spliced an old Terran code, and rerouted its power through salvaged cores. It was enough to send one signal. Just one. That was all he needed. He knelt at the console, shielding it from the storm, and keyed in the last line of the transmission. A low hum built in the structure's frame. Power flowed like breath through broken lungs. Then the light blinked green. He waited. In orbit, aboard the command station, alarms chirped. A burst transmission, Valen said, rising for his station. Encrypted. Terran architecture. Scyther turned, eyes narrowing. Traceable? Barely. Originates from the surface. Same grid he's been working in. Open it. Valen hesitated. There's no message, just a file. Visual. It opened on the main display. A video feed, low-res, clearly recorded with an old combat helmet's internal system. It showed a jungle corridor. Bodies. Krillix Valari, 2 Rythian commandos, all marked with precision wounds. A slow pan revealed a wall scorched with heat, etched into it the old Earth phrase in jagged English. You called it peace. I called it silence. Kane's voice followed, distorted but unmistakably human. I fought for orders once, for flags, then for vengeance. But what I fight for now, you can't bribe or bargain with it. You can't shoot it dead. It lives in every scream you ignored, every child buried in rubble while you shook hands and drafted treaties. I'm not coming for war. A pause. I'm coming for memory. Then the feed cut. The silence that followed was thick and absolute. Trakash exhaled. He's not targeting soldiers. Not anymore. Scyther nodded slowly. No, he's targeting the idea of forgetting. Below, in the jungle's heart, Kane watched the skies darken with new arrivals. He knew they'd seen the message, that they'd finally admit the ceasefire had failed. But it didn't matter now. The hunt was over. The story had been written into the soil. Behind him, a soft rustle. He turned, rifle half-raised, but paused. The figure was small, barely past adolescence. Human, thin, dirt-smudged and wide-eyed. The girl stared up at him from beneath the collapsed beams of an old marketplace, her face pale but unafraid. You're him, she said simply. He lowered the weapon. Why did you stay? Because there were still voices buried in this planet's bones that hadn't been heard. Because ghosts don't leave until someone listens. He didn't say any of that. He just stepped aside and offered his canteen. The girl drank, then sat beside him. They watched the horizon together. High above, warships circled. Kane didn't flinch. They weren't here to end him. Not yet. They were here because they finally believed. The story was no longer his alone. It had spread. It had rooted. It would grow in whispers and warnings, in training manuals and late-night briefings. The name Kane Riker would fade, distorted by time. But what he did, that would remain. Proof that silence, no matter how carefully drafted, could not survive truth. Rain fell harder now. But he wasn't cold.